Hello everyone, I'm Mark Sargent, and this is my take on the Mexican-American War and why it's important to you and why it's important as a lesson, and really because it's tied to more than one event. So let's kind of get into the Mexican-American War. We'll read a couple things. I know the wiki stuff is a little long, but we'll just cover a couple paragraphs just so you guys kind of know what happened in the first place. So the first couple paragraphs of the wiki entry are: the Mexican-American War, also known as the Mexican War or the United States-Mexican War or the invasion of Mexico, was an armed conflict between the United States of America and the Mexican states from 1846 to 1848, so only 2 years. It followed in the wake of the 1845 annexation of Texas, which Mexico considered part of its territory despite the 1836 Texas Revolution. After its independence in 1821 and brief experiment with monarchy, Mexico became a republic in 1824, characterized by considerable instability, so that when war broke out in 1846, Mexico was ill-prepared for the conflict. The war with the United States followed in the wake of decades of Indian raids in the sparsely settled north of Mexico, which prompted the Mexican government to sponsor American migration to the Mexican province of Texas to act as a buffer. Americans and some Mexicans revolted against the Mexican government in the 1836 Texas Revolution, creating a republic not recognized by Mexico, which still claimed it as its national territory. The 1845 expansion of United States territory and its annexation of Texas escalated the dispute between the United States and Mexico to open war. In 1844, James Polk, the president, made a proposition to the Mexican government to purchase the disputed lands. When that offer was rejected, troops from the United States were moved into the disputed territory of Coahuila, or C-O-H, Coahuila? C-O-A-H-U-I-L-A. These troops were then attacked by Mexican troops. It was a small thing, blah, blah, blah. And then there was some battles, and nothing really, the point was the Americans had a chance to buy the Mexicans out, and the Mexicans didn't take the money. So, of course, it's like, take the money or we'll take it by force. And they decided to take it by force. Why does anyone care about this stuff? Stuff I just read to you, that's pretty boring. I absolutely agree, because the war only lasted 2 years. Mexico wasn't ready for the war. The United States was on the rise. Mexico was on the decline. Why is it important? That particular war wasn't necessarily important, but it will be when I read to you what really was important, which was 10 years earlier. And that was, why did the Mexican War happen? The Mexican War happened because of the Battle of the Alamo, which was February 23rd through March 6th of 1836, a full 10 years earlier. And it was tied to, and I'll read the first couple paragraphs of this in the wiki because this sort of makes sense, and then I'll kind of give my editorial after that, which is the Battle of the Alamo was a pivotal event in the Texas Revolution. Following a 13-day siege, Mexican troops under President General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna launched an assault on the Alamo mission near San Antonio, which is now modern-day San Antonio, Texas, United States, killing all of the Texan defenders. Santa Anna's cruelty during the battle inspired many Texans, both Texas settlers and adventurers from the United States, to join the Texan army. Buoyed by a desire for revenge, the Texans defeated the Mexican army at the Battle of San Jacinto on April 21st, 1836, ending the revolution. Several months previously, Texans had driven all Mexican troops out of the Mexican Texas. About 100 Texans were then garrisoned at the Alamo. The Texan force grew slightly with the arrival of reinforcements led by eventual Alamo co-commanders James Bowie, from Bowie Knives, and William B. Travis. On February 23rd, approximately 1,500 Mexicans marched into San Antonio as the first step in a campaign to retake Texas. For the next 10 days, the two armies engaged in several skirmishes with minimal casualties. Aware that his garrison could not withstand an attack by such a large force, Travis wrote multiple letters pleading, this is more important here, pleading for more men and supplies, but fewer than 100 reinforcements arrived there. In the early morning hours of March 6th, the Mexican army advanced on the Alamo. After repulsing 2 attacks, the Texans were unable to fend off the third, and as Mexican Mexican soldiers scaled the walls. Most of the Texan soldiers withdrew into interior buildings. Defenders unable to reach these points were slain by the Mexican cavalry as they attempted to escape. Between 5 and 7 Texans may have surrendered. If so, they were quickly executed. Most eyewitness accounts reported between 182 and 257 Texans died, while most historians of the Alamo agree that around 600 Mexicans were killed or wounded. Several non-combatants were sent to Gonzales to spread word of the Texan defeat. Blah, 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 and that was really basically it. The exception of within Mexico, the battle had often been overshadowed by the events of the Mexican-American War in 1846 to 1848, which this really led to. Okay, so here's the deal. And there's been several movies made on this, the 1950s, and then later there was one with Billy Bob Thornton and a whole bunch of other people, and it was a very romantic type of battle. Okay, so why is this battle important? What is this guy to do anything? You're probably saying, Mark, you're going on a limb here. I am not. This is going to show you how sacrifices are made. If anyone knows how to play chess, you know that pawns are sacrificed, and actually bigger pieces are sacrificed sometimes as well. This is a bigger piece. This is one of those instances where you put a cost on human life, and I'll tell you what human lives can be worth here. So it started out with Texas wanting to be its own country. These sort of things are obscured in most history books, and that is Texas wanted to be its own country, Utah wanted to be its own country, the South wanted to be its own country, but Texas was one of the first. And why not? It's Texas. There's some big cities, there's some resources, it borders the Gulf of Mexico, it's got some cool stuff. They wanted to be their own country. But they couldn't take on, remember, because Texas used to be Mexico territory. They couldn't take on the Mexican military by themselves. And so they tried to fight back, and it didn't look like it wasn't going to pan out. Everyone knew this, but there was an interesting opportunity, and that was the Alamo. So you've got people in the Alamo, some troops, don't have a lot, and the Mexican army is advancing on them, and they've got them outnumbered, I don't know, 7-1, 8-1, something like that, and they're going to lose. And so the Alamo sends dispatchers out there, and they send people, riders to ask for reinforcements. And the federal government had a chance to reinforce the Alamo and turn this into like a kind of a siege. But there's an opportunity there, and that is people fight for revenge. They always fight for revenge. It's that hot-blooded knee-jerk reaction. And so what do? Do you send reinforcements and turn this into the thing? Why are you down the Alamo in the first place? Are you gonna do this and let Texas become its own country? Or do you cut a deal with Texas, meaning the federal government of the United States? And you say, okay, here's what we'll do. We will help you become a state, and you can become a very powerful state. We'll give you all the rights and privileges, but you cannot become your own country. But we will help you, and in fact, we will use this as a launching pad for a war against the Mexicans. But to do this, you have to sacrifice a piece, and that piece is the Alamo. You have to sacrifice the troops there to do it. Those 200 men have to die, and they have to die badly. And you want to turn it to a romantic siege, you can. I mean, who knows if there were any survivors there? We don't know exactly how the fight went down, so you can talk about it in the movies all you want. But the point is the fort was overrun by the Mexican government, and you spread the rumors that they died horribly. Regardless how they died, they could have just got shot or hung. Who knows? I don't think they were necessarily tortured. I mean, it was just a fort. But having them die leads you into the Mexican-American War. It took a while because remember things took longer back then to spread the word, but we look it up if you get the chance. And that saying was, which is why there was several movies made on the battle, which is called "Remember the Alamo." Remember the Alamo. That was really big. They repeated it over and over. Remember the Alamo, which was the battle cry for attacking the Mexican government and attacking their military forces. And once you start down that road, well, why just take Texas? Why not just keep going? So that's what they did. The Mexican-American War, if I go back to it real quick here, took place where Texas, New Mexico, California, North Central and Eastern Mexico, and Mexico City. And it only lasts 2 years, and they weren't ready for it. So you're saying, well, what does that mean? Okay, so here's what I mean about the cost of human life. You trade And again, it's part of the cruelty of war. That is, sometimes you sacrifice pieces. You don't tell the troops they're going to be overrun. You don't tell them the reinforcements aren't coming. You just let them sit there, you give them hope that the reinforcements are coming, but it wasn't going to happen. Those 200, let's say between 2 and 300 men die. Let's say 200. It could have been as little as 200. Those 200 men die, and they inspire the entire government, all the politicians, to push a military campaign, which was short and sweet. And what do you get for it? Well, you get Texas, Arizona, New Mexico. Got to love the name there. We call it New Mexico because it used to be part of Old Mexico. Just that's a little dig at the Mexicans. So you get Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, and oh, that worthless piece of real estate called California. You basically have 4 entire states now, which you traded for the lives of 200 men. Probably the finest real estate. I mean, yes, of course, there were some men killed in the actual war, but not that many in the long run. But the initial cost was 200 men. For that, you get 4 states, and one of them happens to be probably the most valuable state in the union. No question. I think it's more valuable than Florida, and it's a massive piece of real estate, and it's got all sorts of fun resources in it. Is that worth it? Or is that too big a question for you to think about? And that is, I think there was an estimate I did recently where you could look up, how much does all real estate cost in the United States right now? In adjusted dollars, I think the entire country is worth, as far as real estate. So if you took everyone sold their home at once, I think the cost is around between 23 and 25 trillion dollars. So we're talking about not millions and not billions, but several trillion dollars. I mean, California's got to be worth it alone. Several trillion dollars worth of real estate. $1 trillion, even if it was, we'll round down. Let's say 3 trillion bucks, right? For those 4 states, which it's going to be more. I mean, Texas is huge. Arizona's not small. New Mexico, neither Arizona nor New Mexico is not exactly heavily populated, but Texas and California are. They are massively populated, massively industrialized states. Let's say round down $3 trillion. That's a lot of money. In fact, if I did a calculator real quick here, hang on one second. Calc. I should do this real fast. Calculator. I can't find it on my machine. Sorry, guys. Well, you guys could do the math for yourself. In fact, that'd be a nice little homework assignment for you. Figure out, let's say it's $3 trillion. Divide that by 200 men. And now you have a cost of human life. Is any human life, is when they're worth that much money, are you going to sacrifice them? Of course you're going to. So don't say that people won't do things for the greater good. And was it an evil thing? Maybe. But if you're building the empire, remember, we didn't have 50 states, not even close. Back then, we were carving out states. So would they sacrifice 200 men? Yeah, we've done that and more. For those who think differently, look up the Panama Canal rant, which I did, which showed thousands of men being sacrificed for a toll road. Remember what I said in that rant, which was if you're willing to to sacrifice the better part of 6,000 men for essentially what was a toll road, then you're going to be willing to do anything for anything. Sacrificing 200 men who died valiantly defending the Alamo for trillions of dollars worth of real estate, yeah, that's easy. And no one's going to bat an eye, and so that's what you're looking at. That's gives you kind of a quick snapshot of how things are done from the greater good standpoint and how decisions are made. In this case, yeah, maybe the families were compensated. There's a memorial down there. I mean, the fort, as far as I know, is still there. The original stone blocks are still there. The legends were made, heroes were made, songs were made about this, and major motion pictures were made about this. And you're thinking, well, if we had to do things right, we wouldn't have done it. It's like, really? So if it was absolutely wrong, you're going to give all that real estate back to Mexico? You're going to give it, give California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, you're going to give that back to Mexico? No, you're not. No, you might want to, but you're not going to. So there you have it. That's my little rant on the Mexican-American War, and how it gives you sort of a quick overview on how things work in politics, and a nice combination of politics, the military, and chess, and why things are sacrificed for the bigger picture. So there you go, and thanks very much for listening. Talk to you guys next segment.